Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise to extract the most important insights and help you get truly well informed. Today, we're plunging into a topic that casts a long shadow over the dreams of countless aspiring entrepreneurs and, well, the portfolios of shrewd investors too. Startup success, and maybe more often than we like to admit, startup failure. It's a pretty sobering reality, actually. The vast majority of startups, the figure often cited is 90%, don't survive beyond their fifth year. And some studies even suggest the long-term survival rate for all companies, not just startups, can be as low as, like 0.5%? It's kind of staggering. We're talking about incredibly ambitious ventures, brilliant ideas, immense personal sacrifice, yet so many stumble. So what really differentiates the tenacious few who actually make it from the vast majority who don't? Today, we're really going to try and cut through the noise, unpack why so many ambitious ventures face an early demise, what sets the survivors apart, and maybe most importantly, what practical advice this offers. Advice for both aspiring founders who are eager to beat those odds, and also for savvy investors looking for the next big thing. We've pulled insights from comprehensive academic studies, some fascinating analyses of real-world startup postmortems, where founders talk about what went wrong in expert interviews to really try and get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, and our mission today is pretty clear. We want to equip you, the listener, with the knowledge to navigate this incredibly challenging entrepreneurial landscape. Our goal is to help you spot potential pitfalls before they become, insurmountable, and to understand the critical factors that genuinely contribute to longevity, robust revenue generation, and ultimately, sustainable success. We're going to delve into the nuanced interplay of things like market dynamics, team capabilities, financial strategies, and even the often underestimated but crucial role of timing and, frankly, sheer luck. This isn't just theory, right? It's about practical takeaways you can hopefully apply to your own ventures or maybe your investment decisions.
Okay, so let's unpack this with some stark numbers first, because the picture, as you hinted, isn't exactly rosy. That 90% failure rate for new startups isn't just some grim soundbite you hear. It's a hard reality. We're not talking about just closing up shop after a bad week. This is about enduring over years, isn't it?
That's absolutely right. And if you break it down, the statistics paint a very clear picture of how quickly new businesses often cease operations. Approximately 20% of new businesses won't make it past their first 2 years. That's 1 in 5, gone pretty quickly. And then that number jumps significantly, with about 45% failing within 5 years and 65%, almost 2/3, failing within 10 years. What's really sobering is that only about 25%, just 1 in 4, actually managed to survive for 15 years or more. And like you said, some definitions for all companies reaching long-term success put that number as low as 0.5%. It's brutal. And what's fascinating here is that the definition of success itself is often debated, within the source material we looked at. Is it a big exit? Is it sustained profitability over time? Or is it simply, while keeping the lights on, sustained existence? This debate highlights that even defining the outcome can be complex. And it's something founders and investors probably should clarify right from the outset. What are we actually aiming for here?
It really is. And this isn't just a Silicon Valley thing or limited to certain regions, right? Let's look at the Indian context, for example. India is renowned as the world's fastest growing economy. It's got this booming entrepreneurial ecosystem, a land of incredible innovation and opportunity. You hear about it all the time, yet it mirrors these high global failure rates. A staggering 90% of Indian startups don't survive past 5 years. That's according to a study by IBM Institute for Business Value and Oxford Economics.
Indeed. And we've seen examples of both sides of that coin in India, haven't we? You have failed Indian startups like Dazo, a food delivery app that really struggled with logistics and intense competition, and frankly, which was a social networking platform that just couldn't seem to find its niche. These companies had ambition, sure, but ultimately couldn't sustain their operations. They serve as cautionary tales. But then you have these incredible success stories too, like CRD, the fintech platform rewarding credit card payments. It's kind of revolutionized how many Indians manage their finances. Or Vernacular.ai, an AI-powered voice automation platform helping businesses scale customer interactions. And PharmEasy, the online pharmacy and healthcare platform that tapped into a massive market need. These companies haven't just survived, they've thrived, generating substantial revenue, creating jobs, proving that success is possible, even against really daunting odds.
Yeah, and it's important to note the Indian government is actively trying to support this ecosystem, trying to maybe nudge those survival rates up. They have the Startup India initiative, and to even register as a startup under this initiative and potentially get support, a company needs to meet specific criteria. Like, it can't be more than 10 years old, its annual turnover must not exceed 100 crores, which is about, $12 million USD. It must have a new idea that helps solve a real problem, and there shouldn't be be an existing similar business already established. So this shows a clear recognition at the governmental level of the need for innovation and structured support, even while facing these tough failure rates.
Although, as we might get into later, government funding doesn't always automatically guarantee success. That's a whole other interesting angle.
Okay, so we know the numbers are tough, really tough. But why? Why do so many ventures, despite all the potential and the initial ambition, just fall short? Our sources, particularly a deep analysis of 100 startup failure postmortems, where founders bravely share what went wrong, they reveal something crucial. Failure is rarely, if ever, due to just a single isolated cause. It's almost always a combination of factors, right? Like a tangled web of challenges that collectively bring startup down.
That's a critical insight, yeah. It's a mistake to think there's just one single nail in the coffin. Usually, it's several things going wrong at once. And looking at the data, especially from sources like CB Insights and the IGNRD research, we can really start to identify the most common threads that tie these failures together. The single leading reason, this one accounts for a significant 42% of failures, is no market need. Fundamentally, this means founders are building a solution looking for a problem. That's the classic phrase, isn't it? They're creating something they want to build, maybe because it's technically interesting or it appeals to them personally, but it's not what consumers or the market actually needs or, crucially, is willing to pay for. The IGNRD study confirms this too, stating that 33% of startups fail due to a lack of market fit, emphasizing that your product will simply never succeed without proper research and development. The crucial insight here for founders. Don't fall in love with your solution. Fall in love with the problem you're trying to solve for someone.
That makes perfect sense. It's the classic entrepreneurial trap, isn't it? You get so excited about your brilliant idea that you forget to ask, does anyone else actually care? The example from the postmortems for Patient Communicator really drives this home. Doctors want more patients, not an efficient office. Wow. It's such a stark reminder that if you're not solving a real identified pain point for your target user, all the clever tech in the world just won't save you. This really highlights the crucial absence of thorough market research and R&D to truly understand the target audience's needs and pain points before you even start coding or building anything significant.
Precisely. And beyond simply missing the market, a critical pitfall often emerges when founders fail to adequately fund or manage their vision. Ran out of cash. This is the second most cited reason, coming in at 29%, money and time. Well, their finite resources and their judicious allocation is absolutely vital. This isn't just about failing to raise enough money initially, but also about insufficient financial planning and ongoing mismanagement. It's about the burn rate. Shockingly, nearly 47% of startup failures back in 2022 were directly attributed to a lack of financing or running out of cash. The story of Flood, a newsreader app, is a prime example. Running out of cash was tightly linked to their struggle for product market fit and several failed pivots. For founders, the advice is clear. Strategically distribute your capital, try to extend your runway as long as possible, and maintain a provision for uncertainty. Follow what's called the conservatism concept. It's a fundamental accounting principle that basically means strategically preparing for potential future losses in the present. Build buffers, allocate resources carefully.
Yeah, don't assume best-case scenarios all the time.
Exactly. And for investors, it's about scrutinizing those cash burn rates and financial projections really, really closely.
This one just hits hard for anyone who's ever tried to launch something, right? You can have the best idea, the perfect market fit, but if the lights go out because the cash runs out, it's game over. And then there's the team aspect, coming in at 23%. This is where having a diverse team with complementary skill sets becomes absolutely critical. It's not just about technical prowess. It's about having all the bases covered: products, sales, operations, finance.
Oh, definitely. Postmortems frequently lament this very issue. You'll hear founders say things like, I wish we'd had a CTO, a chief technology officer, right from the start. Or, I wish we had a co-founder who genuinely loved the business and operational side of things, not just building the product. The ideal scenario, really, is a founding team that can, at least initially, build an MVP, a minimum viable product, entirely on its own. This isn't just about saving money early on. It's about being able to rapidly validate your core assumptions with real users before you commit massive external resources. It also underscores the importance of checks and balances within the team, rather than, say, a single founder making all the critical decisions, which can easily lead to tunnel vision and some really bad choices.
Right, groupthink or just one person's blind spots.
Exactly. For investors, this means looking really closely at the founding team's combined experience, their track record, and their potential for synergy. Do they complement each other?
Okay, so I've always heard the mantra, focus on your product, don't worry too much about your competitors. But our data here seems to strongly contradict that, doesn't it? Getting outcompeted accounts for 19% of failures. What's the nuance there? Is it about obsessive tracking or more about smart differentiation?
It's absolutely not about ignoring the competition. That seems to be a recipe for failure based on this data. The Wasabi versus Mint example is a classic illustration here. Wasabi was an early online personal finance tool, good intentions, but their product was just harder to use. It required manual data entry for everything. Mint came along with a much more user-friendly interface that could automatically import financial data. They simply won by offering a superior, more convenient solution to the same problem. This highlights the crucial need for a clear differentiation and a truly unique selling proposition, or USP. You have to understand your market and your rivals to find your moat, what makes your business unique and difficult for others to just copy.
So it's strategic awareness, not paranoia.
Exactly. It's about knowing where you stand and how you offer unique value.
Speaking of value, pricing cost issues comes in next at 18%. Pricing is often called a dark art, and it's easy to see why it can go so wrong. It seems like such a delicate balance.
It's incredibly challenging, yeah. You have to balance offering compelling value to your customers with maintaining sustainable profit margins for your business. Get it wrong either way, and you're in trouble. Delight.io, a company that provided customer support software, faced this. Their customers were churning, but interestingly, not because the price was necessarily too high in isolation. It was because the product didn't meet their expectations given that price point. The perceived value wasn't there. When they changed their pricing model to be based on recording duration, it suddenly made more sense to customers because it aligned directly with the value they were receiving. Subscriptions improved. It illustrates that pricing isn't just a number, it's deeply tied to perceived value and how your service aligns with customer usage and expectations.
So you need iterative testing and really deep customer understanding.
Precisely.
And closely related to market fit and pricing is, well, the product itself. Poor product, or a user-unfriendly product, accounts for 17% of failures. It seems obvious, but bad things inevitably happen when user wants and needs are ignored. You can build the most innovative tech, but if it's clunky or difficult to use, it's just a non-starter, right?
Absolutely. The case of GameLayers is quite telling here. They developed this platform for playful web annotations, kind of like adding sticky notes to websites. But their concept, as they admitted themselves in their post-mortem, was simply too abstruse. It was too complicated. The product needed to be easier to have fun with within the first few moments of interaction. If it takes too long to figure out or get value from, people just leave. This ties directly back to that fundamental lack of product market fit and a failure to genuinely incorporate customer feedback into the product's design and user experience.
Simplify, simplify, simplify.
That's often the key, especially early on.
Okay, so you can have a great product idea, potentially good market fit, but if it doesn't have a solid way to actually make money consistently, it's essentially just a hobby, not a business. Need-like business model is another 17% of failures. Startups fail when they are unable to find ways to make money at scale.
Yeah, and being wedded to a single channel for revenue or customer acquisition can be a fatal flaw. We saw this with TutorSpree. They were an online tutoring marketplace, and they relied very heavily on SEO, search engine optimization, for acquiring customers. When Google's algorithm shifted significantly, their primary channel just evaporated almost overnight, and they couldn't pivot fast enough to find alternatives. This emphasizes the critical importance of defining a clear, scalable revenue model right from the outset, whether it's subscriptions, advertising, freemium, one-time purchases, whatever. And you need to ensure that model can grow with the business without breaking down or becoming too reliant on one single thing. A diverse, adaptable business model is really essential for long-term viability.
And even a great product with a solid business model won't sell itself, which leads us to another common pitfall. Poor marketing, accounting for 14% of failures. We often see founders who are brilliant engineers or product people, but they kind of struggle when it comes to actually promoting what they've created. They think the product should just speak for itself.
That's a really common blind spot. Overto, a company that allowed users to share and discover content, failed partly due to a clear lack of marketing skills within their founding team. They realized too late that, and this is a great quote from their postmortem, a thin line between life and death of internet service is a number of users, end quote. It highlights that even if your product is fantastic, if no one knows about it, it just doesn't matter. You won't get users. Founders need to embrace a multi-channel marketing approach. ensure brand consistency across all platforms, and set clear, measurable goals like KPIs to track their outreach effectiveness. Interestingly, the IGNRD study we looked at noted that marketing problem accounts for 23% of failures in their analysis, stating that many promote on the wrong platforms or target the wrong audiences. And budget obviously plays a significant role here too.
So it's not just doing marketing, but doing the right marketing.
Exactly. It's a truly critical area that demands strategic thought and investment.
And intricately linked to marketing, and perhaps even more fundamental, is the failure to truly listen to your audience. Ignoring customers or being inflexible also comes in at 14%. Tunnel vision and just not actively gathering user feedback seem like practically fatal flaws in the startup world.
Oh, absolutely. Founders from eCrowds, which was a social commerce platform, and VoterTide, a political social media site, they candidly admitted in their postmortems to building for themselves instead of their prospective customers. They built what they thought was cool or needed. As a result, they received too little customer input, and it came too late in the process to make meaningful changes without huge effort. This just underscores the immense importance of continuous engagement with your potential and existing customers through surveys, interviews, focus groups, usability testing, just talking to them. You must listen to what your customers are telling you, even if it's not what you want to hear, and be willing to adapt your vision based on that real-world input. Your customers are your compass, really.
Okay, this next one can feel like a particularly cruel twist of fate. Product mistimed at 13%. Releasing too early can lead to a negative first impression, right? Users might write you off before you've even had a chance to mature the product. But releasing too late can mean you've entirely missed your market window. It's a tough balancing act.
It really is. The Calcata example is a perfect illustration here. They were developing these energy-efficient server processors, a great idea in principle. But they launched their 32-bit technology right when the market was rapidly moving towards 64-bit. And maybe just as importantly, the operating system environment wasn't fully ready to support their specific solution yet. They were, in their own words from the postmortem, too early. Despite having a strong product concept, the market simply wasn't prepared to adopt it at scale at that moment. For investors, assessing market readiness is paramount. Even a brilliant product can fail if it arrives at the wrong moment in the market's evolution cycle.
Another 13% of failures are attributed to losing focus. Getting sidetracked by distracting projects, maybe personal issues creeping in, or simply losing sight of the core mission. That seems deadly in the fast-paced startup world.
It absolutely can be. The postmortem for My Favorites, which was a social bookmarking site back in the day, revealed this very issue. The team simply lost interest in the project, and the founder openly questioned their own desire to even continue running a startup. That lack of passion seeped through. This highlights the vital importance of unwavering focus on the core problem you originally set out to solve and the vision you set out to achieve. Distractions, whether they're internal lack of motivation or chasing external shiny objects, can quickly derail even a promising venture. You need that grit and focus.
And speaking of internal issues, disharmony on the team or with investors also comes in at 13%. Discord among co-founders or outright acrimony and conflict with investors can absolutely be fatal, especially when critical decisions need to be made quickly.
Oh, definitely. The dramatic case of Ars Digital, an early web services company, is really stark cautionary tale here. Investor decisions, which were apparently made without strong founder alignment and sometimes even against the founder's wishes, led to a vastly higher cost structure, a product that became deprecated, and ultimately, the company surrendered its market leadership. It vividly demonstrates how crucial founder-investor alignment and mutual trust are to a startup's very survival, not just its growth potential. Without that unified front, external pressures just become internal fractures that can break the company apart. And while those are the top drivers of failure, our deep dive revealed several other significant, though maybe slightly less frequent, factors that can still absolutely derail a promising venture. We should probably touch on those briefly. A pivot gone bad, for instance, accounts for 10% of failures. This highlights that a change in direction isn't always a magic bullet, right?
Yeah, pivoting isn't a cure-all.
Exactly. As FlowTab, a mobile ordering app for bars, learned the hard way, pivoting for pivoting's sake is worthless. A pivot needs to be a calculated, hypothesis-driven adjustment. It should be based on clear market signals or validated learning, not just a desperate flail in the dark when things aren't going well.
Then there's lack of passion and domain expertise at 9%. This might seem obvious, but if the founders don't genuinely care about the problem they're solving, or they lack deep knowledge in that specific area, it's a huge disconnect that usually shows over time especially when things get tough.
Yeah, the NewStill founders admitted quite openly they didn't really care about journalism, which was the domain their product was actually in. They built something they were only interested in from a business perspective. That lack of genuine connection is risky. It shows that real passion and deep understanding of your industry are pretty foundational. Without them, commitment can falter when challenges inevitably arise, and you might miss crucial nuances of the market that someone deeply embedded would catch.
Investors often look for founders who are truly obsessed with the problem.
They do. That obsession can carry you through the hard times.
Bad location, also at 9%, can manifest in some unexpected ways. It's not just about being in Silicon Valley or not, right? It's about the congruence between your concept and your geographical presence, or maybe team distribution.
Exactly. Beyond just the physical office address, bad location can mean your concept isn't well suited to your initial geographical market. Metro, a location-based social network, found this when their app struggled to gain traction outside of Chicago, where they started. Or, for remote teams like Dever, which offered a cloud-based development environment, it can mean the logistical and communication hurdles become insurmountable without very deliberate effort and the right tools. Conversely, being in areas with a high concentration of skilled professionals and early adopters, often called talent density, like San Francisco, Cambridge, Massachusetts, maybe Austin or Bangalore, that can significantly decrease your customer acquisition costs, your CAC.
Because it's easier to reach those early adopters and find collaborative partners.
Precisely. Proximity still matters in many ways.
Okay, at 8%, we see no financing investor interest. This is pretty straightforward. It's explicitly cited by founders when they simply couldn't secure the funding needed to continue operations. It's the ultimate game over for many ventures.
Yeah, and this often ties back into other issues we've discussed, doesn't it? Like a lack of compelling product market fit, or maybe a weak business model that just doesn't attract investment. Or perhaps an inability by the founders to articulate their vision clearly and convincingly. It's often the ultimate symptom of not being able to convince the market or investors of your viability, or maybe just a failure to build enough traction to warrant further capital infusion. For founders, it's a stark reminder that even a great idea needs to be packaged, presented, and validated in a way that secures the necessary fuel to keep going.
Legal challenges, also at 8%, can be a kind of hidden drain, can't they? From simple things like non-compliance with regulations to massive intellectual property costs or lawsuits. These hurdles can just suck a startup dry and halt growth in its tracks.
Absolutely. Decide.com, which was a price prediction engine, had their main affiliate account suspended due to non-compliance with terms of service. That accounted for over 80% of their revenue stream, basically crippling them. And music startups like Turntable.fm famously struggled with the incredibly high costs and complexities of dealing with record labels and intellectual property issues. This prevented their international growth and just drained their resources. These challenges can be unpredictable and financially devastating, which really demands proactive legal counsel from the start, not just when a problem blows up.
And finally, a surprising one, maybe, also at 8%. Don't use network advisors. Founders actually lamented in their postmortems not properly utilizing their own connections or their investors for help when they were facing tough decisions or navigating new territory.
Yeah, this is a crucial mistake, and it often seems to stem from either a desire to do absolutely everything yourself, maybe an ego thing, or perhaps just a sense of insecurity about asking for help. As one founder of Kiko, an early online calendar, put it very bluntly in their postmortem, get your investors involved. Your investors are there to help you. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It highlights that just having a network isn't enough. You have to actively leverage it, especially when you're facing unfamiliar territory, complex problems, or crucial strategic choices. Insecurity, or maybe the desire to maintain absolute control, can be a significant barrier to seeking and accepting crucial assistance from seasoned mentors and investors who have likely seen similar challenges many times before. Don't try to reinvent the wheel alone.
Okay, now let's pivot a bit from those external challenges and product issues to something profoundly internal, yet equally, if not arguably more critical, the human element. Specifically, we're talking about bad management. It's often described as the silent killer for startups, kind of creeping up as the company grows and complexity increases. And here's a truly compelling, maybe even shocking finding. 65% of leading venture capitalists surveyed by Harvard Business School blamed bad management at the senior level as the primary reason for failure in otherwise high-potential startups. That's huge.
That statistic truly underscores the immense importance of leadership, doesn't it? The VCs sent a really clear message. Senior management is the critical ingredient that makes or breaks venture-backed businesses. And when we look at broader statistics from 2019, something like 82% of startups were cited as failing specifically due to bad management and leadership and experience. This isn't just about having a good idea or a clever product. It really comes down to the people steering the ship. Many startups start with just the founders, maybe one or two early employees. As the business scales and new hires come on board, if the founders lack well-developed management skills, which many initially do, the daily pressures of managing a growing team can lead to poor choices, reactive decisions, and a rapidly deteriorating company culture.
So it's a skill that needs deliberate development.
Absolutely. For investors, this means heavily scrutinizing not just the idea, but the leadership potential and experience of the founding team right from the start.
It's fascinating how the founder's attitude, their personality, their core motivations, it often just becomes the company culture, doesn't it? It's like their shadow extends over everything, shaping the entire environment for better or worse.
That's spot on. Most startups are born from the creative minds of product specialists, right? People who are brilliant at conceptualizing and building things. But these founders, especially if their background is heavily technical or creative, often gravely underestimate the sheer necessity of developing strong people management skills as the team grows. A really dangerous pitfall emerges when rapid hiring sprees begin, often fueled by new funding. Inexperienced founders, maybe under pressure to scale quickly, might recruit friends, family, or former colleagues into high-responsibility roles. The issue isn't necessarily their loyalty, but rather that these appointments are sometimes based more on personal relationships and trust than on proven professional suitability or management capabilities. This can lead to disastrous consequences for the whole team and the company's trajectory down the line.
Like bringing on your brilliant coder friend as your head of sales just because you like them.
Exactly. It rarely ends well if they don't have the right skills or aptitude for that management role.
And when we talk about bad bosses in this startup context, it's not always intentional malice, is it? Often, people are simply unaware they lack these critical skills or they're just overwhelmed, but the ripple effects are absolutely devastating. Let's maybe dig into some of those toxic traits that can spread like wildfire in a growing company.
Absolutely. And you're right, it's often about incompetence rather than malice, but the impact is the same. One of the most damaging traits is simply poor listening skills. Founders or managers might take feedback, especially critical feedback, very personally. They get defensive, they justify their decisions rather than actually hearing valid input, particularly if it comes from more junior staff. This leads directly to employee disengagement. Staff feel their contributions aren't valued, and critical information from the rock face, those interacting directly with customers of the product, goes unheard at the top. It's a sure way to kill internal innovation and morale.
And that poor listening can quickly devolve into dictating rather than explaining, can't it? This is that kind of arrogant, one-way communication style that utterly kills motivation, replacing collaboration with just compliance.
It really does. It creates an environment where employees become afraid to ask questions or offer alternative solutions because they're simply told how things will be done, by when, and often what the consequences will be if deadlines aren't met. Very few people can embrace a new task or project with genuine enthusiasm under those kinds of conditions. Employee churn will likely be high, and productivity will be, at best, just average. You end up with a team that just executes orders robotically, not one that brings its full creativity and critical thinking to the table.
And there's the infamous my way or the highway approach. This toxic trait seems to stem from a manager willfully creating an environment of insecurity and fear, maybe especially when they feel their authority is being challenged.
Yeah, and it often manifests as outright bullying, sometimes subtly targeting specific individuals or even marginalized groups. This leads inevitably to a loss of top talent because the best people simply won't tolerate that kind of environment for long. Employees start to avoid interaction, they stick rigidly to instructions to avoid drawing negative attention, and this stifles any innovation or proactivity. This management style can do massive, lasting harm to an employer's brand and the business's long-term success, making it almost impossible to attract and retain the best people in the future.
Another really common issue, particularly in startups where those early hires might be close friends or connections of the founder, is when a manager practices favoritism. Personal relationships start overriding actual performance.
Yes. This creates an environment where untouchable individuals can exist, people whose poor performance or maybe even toxic attitudes are consistently overlooked because of their relationship with the boss. Other employees quickly learn that merit doesn't really matter, which leads to deep disengagement, resentment, and often the departure of your top performers who leave for places where their efforts are actually recognized and rewarded fairly. Bias in promotions, project assignments, and even just day-to-day credibility further erodes morale and trust, making it impossible to build a fair and meritocratic culture.
And as a startup grows, maybe one of the hardest things for an initially hands-on founder to do is to relinquish control. Micromanagement often seems to stem from personal insecurity and maybe a belief that nobody else can do the job quite as well as they can.
It's a huge scaling challenge. Micromanagement stifles innovation because people aren't given the autonomy to try new things or make decisions. It also causes significant delays as everyone waits for approval on every minute detail. This leads directly to employee disengagement and departure, as staff see no scope for real growth or development under that kind of scrutiny. In a rapidly evolving market, a founder with a one-trick pony mindset who simply can't delegate effectively will jeopardize their venture's ability to innovate and adapt quickly. You just can't scale if you remain the bottleneck for every single decision.
Yeah, that makes sense. And perhaps one of the most frustrating traits for employees to deal with is when a manager takes all the credit and shifts all the blame. This seems like a really quick way to destroy team cohesion and trust.
It's incredibly destructive. These managers claim team successes entirely as their own, failing to appreciate or acknowledge the contributions of others. And conversely, they publicly blame individuals for failures, often without proper investigation, even when the fault might lie elsewhere or be due to systemic issues. They tend to jump to conclusions, they rarely investigate thoroughly, and they almost never apologize when they get it wrong.
Yeah.
This utterly destroys trust and transparency within the team, making it virtually impossible for anyone to function effectively or feel psychologically secure in their role. It creates a culture of fear, silence, and covering your back.
And finally, a really pervasive problem that just undermines motivation across the board: lack of appreciation and recognition. Basically, treating employees as mere cogs in a machine, just resources to be utilized.
Yeah, managers with this kind of mindset often believe that a salary is enough motivation in itself. They might create minimal, perhaps even stark working environments with strict rules and maybe no amenities or chill-out spaces. There's often a noticeable absence of performance bonuses, meaningful recognition awards, or even just simple verbal appreciation for effort. Predictably, this results in low motivation and below-average productivity. They fundamentally fail to understand that a happy, motivated workforce isn't just some nice-to-have perk. It's a fundamental driver of startup success because engaged employees are demonstrably more innovative, more productive, and more loyal in the long run.
Okay, so if that's the dark side, the catalog of bad management traits, what's the contrast? What really marks a good manager? Someone who actually works with people more than just managing them, as one source put it.
Well, at its core, a good manager isn't just about managing people in a task-oriented way. It's really about cultivating an environment of trust, transparency, and empowerment, where team members feel genuinely valued and can actually thrive. Good managers actively build mutual trust and respect. They lead by example. They don't just talk the talk. They share information openly. And importantly, they admit their own mistakes, which builds psychological safety. They genuinely listen to challenges and take action on problems identified by their team members. They treat everyone fairly and equally, encourage cooperation over internal competition, and publicly give credit where it's due, acknowledging employees' efforts specifically. Crucially, they also take an interest in their team members' careers. They discuss ambitions, offer advice and coaching, get to know their employees as people, not just job titles, and show genuine empathy, especially during difficult times. They understand that building strong give-and-take relationships is vital. They get that a happy, motivated workforce is essential. These leaders possess not only technical expertise and IQ, but also high emotional intelligence, EQ. This is the kind of leadership investors should really be looking for, and founders should aspire to.
All right, moving beyond the critical human element, let's circle back to something we touched on earlier, which is often called the absolute holy grail for any startup: product market fit, or PMF. It is consistently cited as the biggest single reason for startup success because it's fundamentally about serving a real need that people are actually willing to pay money for. It's what everyone is ultimately chasing, right?
Absolutely. Validating PMF significantly, dramatically increases your odds of success. And this goes right back to our earlier discussion about no market need being the #1 reason for failure. The importance of rigorous research and development, or R&D, and genuinely engaging with potential customers before you even start building seriously cannot be overstated. You have to avoid that trap of creating a product that doesn't truly meet a specific validated need, no matter how brilliant you think the underlying idea is. Think about Airbnb's journey again. They initially offered air mattresses for rent on floors during conferences. But through testing and really listening to customer feedback, they realized travelers were looking for something more unique spaces, local experiences, something beyond just a cheap bed. They pivoted their entire model towards that insight, demonstrating critical adaptability and ultimately finding their true massive product market fit.
And in today's often crowded markets, simply existing, even with decent PMF, often isn't enough. Navigating the competitive landscape and finding a way to stand out is crucial. As we saw from the data, ignoring competitors is basically a recipe for disaster. So how do you keep tabs effectively without getting totally bogged down in paranoia?
Yeah, it's a balance. Competitor analysis needs to be an essential but also continuous process. It's not a one-off task. It involves identifying both your direct competitors, those offering very similar products to the exact same target market, like maybe another project management tool, and also your indirect competitors. These might serve different markets but with similar offerings, or perhaps they solve the same underlying customer problem but in a completely different way, like say email versus Slack for team communication. There are tools like SEMrush or Ahrefs that can provide valuable insights into competitor strategies, their website traffic sources, their social media presence, what keywords they target. And conducting a SWOT analysis looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats on your key competitors helps you devise strategies to capitalize on your own strengths and perhaps exploit their weaknesses. The ultimate goal is to develop that clear, unique selling proposition, USP, and a compelling brand story that sets you apart. You need to build your moat, what makes your business unique and genuinely difficult for others to copy easily. It's about smart, strategic differentiation.
This next point really highlights the sometimes unpredictable, almost capricious nature of the startup world. Even with perfect product market fit and great execution, the critical factor of timing can make or break you. It can feel like a roll of the dice sometimes, can't it?
Indeed. It's often cited, even by successful founders like Bill Gross in his TED Talk, as potentially the single most important factor for success, outweighing even the idea or the team in some cases. Being too early, like we discussed with Calxeda launching their 32-bit tech just as the market demanded 64-bit, and when the surrounding ecosystem wasn't quite ready, that can lead to failure even with a strong product. Imagine launching, say, a sophisticated VR headset in 2010 when the processing power and content just weren't there yet. You're simply ahead of your time. Conversely, being too late means you've likely missed your window of opportunity entirely. You might be entering a saturated market with established players and very little room left for growth without massive investment. Understanding market readiness is paramount. You need to try and arrive when customers are actually receptive and the broader ecosystem is prepared to support your solution. So for investors, this is about evaluating those macro trends and market maturity just as much as the specific product or team. Exactly. It's the context that matters hugely.
This brings us naturally to the art of the pivot. We've touched on pivot gone bad as a specific reason for failure, but a pivot itself isn't inherently bad, is it? In fact, it can often be a sign of resilience and smart adaptation. So maybe we should clarify, what exactly is a pivot for a startup?
Yeah, that's a good point. A startup pivot is essentially adjusting a company's core business model or strategy in response to new information, maybe changing market conditions, direct or indirect customer feedback, competitive pressures, or other factors affecting profitability or growth. While it can sometimes be a significant, dramatic shift in overall approach, like maybe moving from a business-to-consumer B2C model to a business-to-business B2B model, it can also refer to more minor but still strategic modifications. Things like changing your primary promotional strategy, offering a new innovative service alongside your core product, or maybe significantly adjusting your pricing plan based on user behavior. The lean startup methodology, popularized by Eric Ries, actively encourages these kinds of iterative adjustments based on validated learning from user responses. It allows startups to challenge their initial assumptions and discover potentially more fruitful opportunities without burning through excessive resources on the wrong path.
So it's about that cycle: build, measure, learn, adapt.
Precisely. It's about learning what works and doubling down, or learning what doesn't and changing course.
So given that, when do you actually know it's time to make such a potentially drastic change? What are the clear signals that your startup might genuinely need to pivot rather than just tweak things slightly or persevere?
There are several key indicators that often pop up. If your company finds itself consistently playing catch-up with competitors, despite putting in significant effort and resources, that's a potential red flag. Or if there's simply too much overwhelming competition emerging in your initial niche, making it hard to stand out. Hitting a development plateau is another big one, seeing slow or no progress in key metrics like user growth, engagement, or revenue suggesting your current approach has maybe hit its ceiling. Another common sign is when only one specific product or service within your broader offering gains significant traction while the rest falter. That might indicate you should really focus and capitalize on what's clearly working and perhaps prune the rest. And perhaps most critically, if you receive a consistently lukewarm or negative response from your target market to your initial core offering, even after doing all that customer development and research up front, it's a strong indication that a fundamental pivot may be necessary.
These must be really tough conversations for founders to have, admitting something isn't working.
Incredibly tough, but often absolutely crucial for survival.
And when a pivot is successful, it can be truly transformative, right? Taking a company from the brink of failure to massive success. Can you give us some concrete examples of well-known companies that totally nailed the pivot?
Oh, certainly. There's some classic examples. Twitter's a famous one. It originally started as a podcasting platform called Odeo. They realized people were actually more interested in sharing quick, short status updates with their network than in subscribing to long-form audio content. That crucial insight led them to pivot to the microblogging tool we all know today. Instagram started life as a much more complex, location-based social network called Bourbon. It had check-ins, plans, points, and photo sharing. Its founders noticed users were overwhelmingly engaging only with the photo sharing feature, so they radically stripped everything else away and pivoted to become the simple, elegant photo sharing app that exploded in popularity. And Slack, the business communication tool. It originally began as a game development company called Tiny Speck. Their online game, Glitch, unfortunately flopped commercially, but they realized the internal communication tool they had built just for their own distributed team was incredibly powerful and potentially valuable to other businesses. So they pivoted the entire company focus to Slack.
Wow. So these are all examples of companies that recognize the need for change based on data or user behavior and executed it effectively, sometimes turning internal tools or minor features into their core business.
Exactly. They weren't afraid to abandon their original vision when the evidence pointed elsewhere.
Those are really powerful stories. So, okay, once you've made that courageous, often difficult decision to pivot, what's the practical advice for how to pivot successfully, avoiding those pitfalls like pivoting for pivoting's sake?
Good question. First, you need to ensure that your proposed new direction genuinely creates tangible opportunities for growth and expansion. You don't want to pivot into another dead end. Second, importantly, do not procrastinate once the decision is made. Unnecessary delay just wastes valuable time, money, and potentially team morale. Momentum is key. Third, set clear, measurable goals for the new direction that still align with your company's ultimate, perhaps slightly adjusted, vision. A pivot should still have a North Star guiding it. Fourth, you need to thoroughly analyze your new target demographic and the specific problems they are currently facing. It's almost like starting a new mini startup within your existing one. Do your homework again. Fifth, continuously integrate customer feedback into your new strategy right from the start of the pivot to ensure you're building what's truly needed this time. And finally, try to leverage your existing resources and assets wherever possible. Don't just throw everything out. Can code be repurposed? Can team skills be reapplied? Can brand equity be transferred? Don't let previous efforts go entirely to waste if they can be adapted. However, pivoting isn't without its own set of significant risks, and there are definitely common mistakes founders need to actively avoid. Lack of planning is a major one. Just pivoting impulsively without comprehensive market research for the new direction, without clear goals, or without contingency plans can lead to wasted effort and burning through remaining resources even faster. Another dangerous trap is losing sight of the core problem you initially set out to solve. A pivot should ideally still align with solving a fundamental customer need, just perhaps in a different way or for a different segment, not just chasing a completely unrelated, shiny new trend. Poor communication during a pivot is also potentially fatal. Failing to clearly and transparently inform all your stakeholders, that includes employees, existing customers, investors, partners, about the change, the reasons why, and the new direction can breed distrust, confusion, and resistance. And lastly, a lack of flexibility within the new direction can be a problem too. Sticking rigidly to old methods, processes, or technologies that aren't suitable for the new strategy can lead to stagnation, even after a pivot, preventing true adaptation and success in the new space.
That makes sense. Before we move on from strategy, are there viable alternatives to a full-blown pivot that a startup might consider for growth? Maybe less drastic options, but still impactful ways to adapt or expand?
Yes, absolutely. There are related strategies that offer growth potential without necessarily requiring a complete overhaul of the core business model. Diversification is one. This involves expanding into different but often related domains or product lines while leveraging existing assets or brand recognition. Think of, say, a successful coffee shop starting to sell its own branded beans or merchandise. It's broadening the offering within the existing framework. Optimization is another. This focuses purely on improving the efficiency and productivity of your current offerings, making them better, faster, or cheaper, rather than fundamentally different. For example, a software company might invest heavily in refining its user interface based on feedback or optimizing its back-end processes to improve performance and reduce costs. And innovation involves designing entirely new products or services, but ones that are still consistent with the existing business model and target audience. Like maybe a meal delivery service, adding a new premium line of gourmet meals, or a subscription box company offering a limited edition themed box alongside its regular offerings. These approaches can offer growth with potentially less risk than a complete radical pivot, though they might not bring the same potentially transformative change if a fundamental market shift or a flawed core model is the underlying issue. It depends on the diagnosis of the problem.
Okay, we've talked quite a bit about running out of cash being a top reason for failure. From an investor's perspective, this really highlights that financial management goes far, far beyond just the initial act of raising money, doesn't it? It's about disciplined allocation, careful planning, and constant foresight.
It absolutely does. Sound financial management necessitates detailed budgeting with realistic projection looking at least 6 months, preferably 12. And it requires rigorous cash flow monitoring, ideally on a daily or weekly basis in the early cash-tight stages. Startups need to know exactly where every single dollar is coming from and where it's going. Strategic evaluation of external funding options is also critical. Weighing the pros and cons of bootstrapping versus seeking venture capital, or perhaps exploring debt options, needs to be done carefully to ensure alignment with the company's long-term goals and growth trajectory. Money is merely a tool, right? How it's managed makes all the difference between survival and failure. A clear, realistic financial strategy and evidence of disciplined management is a huge green flag for any potential investor.
And speaking of money, it seems not all funding sources are created equal when it comes to startup longevity, according to some interesting new research we looked at. There's some really fascinating, maybe even counterintuitive nuances in how different funding sources impact actual survival rates. This seems to go against some conventional wisdom.
Yeah, this is where an econometric analysis, which is basically a deep dive into the financial data across thousands of startups, yielded some truly surprising results regarding survival. The study looked at various funding types and their effect on the likelihood of failure. Debt financing, perhaps surprisingly to some, was found to reduce the failure risk by a remarkable 86% in this particular study, suggesting a surprising level of safety, often overlooked in the VC-focused narrative.
Why might that be?
Well, it could be because debt typically comes with strict repayment schedules, which forces a certain financial discipline. Plus, it doesn't dilute the founder's equity, allowing them to retain more control, which might lead to more stable decision-making in some cases. Angel investments also prove very beneficial for survival, reducing the failure risk by 71%. This likely reflects the smart money aspect. Angels often bring valuable hands-on mentorship, industry connections, and strategic advice alongside their capital. Even friends, family, and fools, FFF money, often seen as less sophisticated, was shown to improve survival by cutting the likelihood of failure, or the hazard rates as economists call it, almost in half. This suggests that even relatively small early investments from a supportive network can provide that critical runway extension needed to reach the next milestone. However, here's where it gets really interesting and challenges common assumptions. Government funding showed a dramatic negative correlation with survival in this study. Firms receiving government funds were found to be 3.6 times more likely to fail than other firms.
Wow, that's counterintuitive to say the least. Why? Any theories?
Yeah, the study doesn't definitively say why, but it raises important policy questions. Are these funds perhaps going to inherently riskier ventures that might struggle regardless? Are there bureaucratic hurdles or reporting requirements that drain resources? Or are the goals of these programs sometimes different from pure long-term commercial viability? It's something that needs more investigation. And perhaps equally surprising, equity companies and venture capital showed no statistically significant direct effect on survival in this particular analysis.
Really, no direct effect on survival.
Not directly on survival in the time frame studied here, although they are strongly linked to other aspects of success, like achieving faster growth, higher valuations, and larger scale. So VC funding might push for rapid growth, which could increase risk in the short term, even if it leads to bigger outcomes for the successes. It doesn't mean VC is bad, of course, just that its direct impact on initial survival, according to the specific econometric model, wasn't as pronounced as debt or angel funding.
That government funding statistic is really thought-provoking. It certainly challenges the simplistic idea that any funding is good funding and suggests investors should look beyond just the capital itself to the source and the associated implications. Now, let's explore the complex interactions between who the founders are, their background, their experience, and how they secure funding or collaborate with others. This is about founder attributes and their complementarity with funding and collaborations, which seems like a really novel and important area of research.
Yes, this study uncovered some fascinating findings on how founder human capital, hers, their education, their experience, interacts with competitive advantages and different financing strategies. It's not just about the funding type, but how it pairs with the founder. For instance, they found that more educated founders benefit more in terms of survival rates when they engage in university collaborations. However, this pairing surprisingly leads to lower revenues in the short to medium term.
Lower revenues, why are that?
The interpretation is that this combination might suggest a focus on deeper knowledge acquisition, perhaps longer R&D cycles, maybe more fundamental scientific development, rather than immediate commercialization or quick profits. It's potentially a different kind of success being prioritized, focusing on innovation first. For investors, this might mean understanding the founder's core motivation. Is it quick market entry or building deep defensible tech? In stark contrast, founders with more industry experience, particularly serial entrepreneurs who've built and scaled businesses before, were found to gain exponential benefits for survival when they partner with commercial entities. And crucially, this combination also generates significantly higher revenues and employment. This highlights a clear, powerful synergy for commercialization and profitability. Their practical knowledge, their networks, combined with strategic commercial partnerships, directly translates into tangible business growth and financial success. Furthermore, the study found that combining industry experience, specifically with angel investing, provides an additional boost in both revenue and employment for startups. This perhaps reflects the synergy between experienced operators and angels, who often bring relevant industry connections and pragmatic mentorship alongside their capital.
Okay, so experience plus commercial partners or experienced angel investors seems to be a really potent combination, especially for driving revenue and job creation. But what about industry experience paired with traditional venture capital? This is where the findings got truly counterintuitive again, right?
This is indeed probably the most counterintuitive finding of the study, and something investors really need to grapple with. Industry experience combined with venture capital funding was actually found to lead to a decrease in revenues and employment compared to other combinations.
A decrease? That seems backwards. Any idea why?
It's a brand new discovery in the literature, so the study calls for more research to unpack the exact reasons. But possible explanations could revolve around potential issues of control or strategic misalignment. Experienced founders might prefer more autonomy and perhaps a more measured, sustainable growth path, whereas VCs often push for very rapid scaling, blitz scaling, and may exert more control over strategy to achieve faster exits. This potential mismatch in strategic vision or operational approach could, counterintuitively, hinder immediate revenue generation or efficient job creation, even if it aims for a larger eventual outcome. It's a really complex interplay that warrants much deeper investigation by investors doing their due diligence.
Absolutely fascinating. And finally, a point that ties back nicely to our earlier discussion about founders sometimes failing to use their networks, something they often regret later. The measurable importance of actively leveraging networks and advisors for success.
Absolutely. The data we have from looking at successful startups, particularly those scaling to significant revenue milestones like $50 plus B&A, show a clear pattern emerges. They often have 3 or more active advisors who hold equity in the company, meaning these advisors have real skin in the game and are incentivized to provide meaningful help. They also tend to have 5 or more strong connections originating from top ecosystems like the Silicon Valley, Boston, London, etc. These connections provide invaluable access to talent, potential partners, follow-on capital, and market insights. And many successful scaling companies offer stock options to all employees, not just executives, which helps align everyone's interests towards the company's long-term success. So this reinforces the point. It's not just about having a network on paper. It's about actively cultivating it, leveraging it strategically, and structuring the incentives correctly. Investors frequently look at a founder's existing network and, more importantly, their demonstrated ability to utilize it effectively as a key indicator of their resourcefulness and potential for future success. It enhances competitive advantages and access to vital resources, making it much easier to overcome the inevitable bumps in the road.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We've seen the stark numbers, heard some cautionary tales, and really unpacked the data behind why so many startups fail. And while luck is often mentioned, almost inevitably, as a factor in startup success, we've learned it's probably less about random chance and maybe more about increasing the surface area of luck, being prepared, being adaptable, taking more calculated swings at the plate. It's not just pure happenstance for those who succeed.
Precisely. Success is certainly not a simple formula you can just follow. But it does seem to be a complex combination of diligence, continuous adaptability, and a series of astute strategic choices made over time. Intellect and sheer hard work remain absolutely paramount, of course. The 10% or so who ultimately succeed aren't just fortunate. They seem to be operating differently, more strategically in several key areas. They're effectively creating their own luck through better preparation and execution. For founders wanting to join that group, and for investors trying to pick them, understanding these differences is really key to judging potential. First and foremost, the successful ones demonstrate deep market understanding and genuine product-market fit. They don't just build a cool product. They solve real problems that people genuinely need solved and, crucially, are willing to pay for. They engage deeply with customers before they build anything significant, and they continuously iterate based on real user feedback, rather than operating in an internal vacuum based on assumptions. They ensure their solution truly resonates with the target market. They become masters of identifying and validating true pain points.
They also tend to have a strong, diverse team and visionary, yet grounded leadership. This means having the right mix of skills, onboard technical, business development, marketing, finance, but also ensuring internal harmony and fostering a positive, resilient culture. Leadership here is absolutely key, emphasizing active listening, clear communication, effective delegation, not micromanagement, and genuine appreciation for contributions from everyone. It really boils down to having high emotional intelligence, EQ, which creates a more resilient, motivated, and ultimately more effective workforce.
And that effective leadership often leads to strategic financial management. The successful 10% truly understand cash flow intricacies. They budget meticulously and realistically. They choose funding sources, whether debt, angel, VC, or bootstrapping, that truly complement their specific founder attributes, their stage of growth, and their long-term business goals. They recognize, as we saw in the data, that not all money acts the same way in terms of impact on survival and growth trajectory. They treat every dollar, especially early on, like it's potentially their last.
They also exhibit continuous adaptability and calculated pivots. They aren't afraid to change direction when the market signals or data indicate it's necessary. They're constantly listening to the market. But crucially, when they do pivot, it's typically well-planned, it's hypothesis-driven based on validated learning, and it's aligned with clear, tangible opportunities for growth, not just reactive flailing in moments of panic or desperation. They understand when to change course and, importantly, how to do it effectively.
And underpinning all of this is relentless focus and execution. They manage to avoid the countless distractions that pull startups in different directions. They commit fully to their core vision and strategy, at least until evidence suggests a pivot is needed. They work hard to differentiate their brand effectively in a competitive landscape, building that elusive but essential moat around their business. This dedication ensures that they don't get easily sidetracked by shiny objects or internal disinterest, allowing them to carve out and defend a valuable position in the market.
And finally, they seem to be masters at leveraging networks and partnerships. They actively utilize expert advisors, they tap into connections within ecosystems for talent or deals, and they forge strategic collaborations, particularly those commercial partnerships that we've seen can be so vital for driving revenue growth and market access. It's really not just having a network, but actively using it proactively and intelligently to open doors, solve problems, and accelerate growth.
And just to add a couple of specific insights from that Indian context study we mentioned, focusing on technology-driven startups, it highlighted 4 key success factors that really resonate globally but are perhaps especially critical there. Innovation and uniqueness, really standing out with something novel in a crowded, fast-moving market. Scalability, the inherent ability of the business model and technology to grow rapidly without collapsing under the strain. Adaptability, that flexibility to respond quickly to market changes and evolving customer needs. And crucially, access to talent, the ability to attract, retain, and motivate a skilled and dedicated team in a competitive hiring environment. These seem particularly relevant in fast-growing, tech-focused markets where speed, innovation, and talent are absolutely everything.
Okay, so wrapping this up, for the aspiring founders listening out there, maybe feeling a bit daunted but also inspired, what are the core practical takeaways from this deep dive? What should they really focus on from day one to increase their chances of being in that successful 10%?
Well, first, prioritize deep market research and genuine customer engagement right from the very beginning before you write a single line of code if possible. Validate the problem first. Second, focus intensely on building a balanced, skilled, and harmonious founding team that can actually execute across all the necessary functions: tech, product, sales, marketing, finance. Complementary skills are key. Third, develop a robust, scalable business model early on and manage your finances meticulously. Have clear budgets, monitor your cash flow religiously. Fourth, be prepared and willing to pivot based on evidence, but do so strategically, with clear goals and excellent, transparent communication to all your stakeholders. Fifth, consciously cultivate strong leadership skills yourself, focusing particularly on people management, communication, and fostering a positive, trust-based work environment. Your culture starts with you. And finally, actively seek out and leverage expert advisors and relevant industry networks. Don't be afraid to ask for help or integrate outside perspectives. Remember, your startup journey is almost certainly going to be a marathon, not a sprint. And these principles can serve as your essential guideposts along the way.
It's a great summary. And flipping the coin, for the investors and venture capitalists listening, what should they be keenly noting from this deep dive when they're evaluating potential startups? How can they more effectively judge whether a startup is likely to succeed or fail, looking beyond just a flashy pitch deck or a charismatic founder?
I think the key is to look beyond just the surface idea. Heavily invest in the entrepreneur, as the saying goes, but specifically look for resilience, adaptability, and particularly their demonstrated ability to leverage networks effectively. Recognize that different financing strategies have demonstrably varied impacts on survival rates, revenue generation, and employment creation, especially when you consider how they interact with the founder's specific industry experience and educational background. Those new findings we discussed, for instance, about industry experience potentially interacting negatively with venture capital in terms of short-term revenue and employment. Those are critical nuances that warrant deeper diligence into strategic alignment and growth expectations between the founder and the VC. Also, it's probably worth scrutinizing the potential implications of that surprising negative correlation between government funding and survival rates found in the study. What does that tell us? Ultimately, the old adage to bet on the jockey, the founder, the horse, the business product, or the race, the market timing, is really brought to life here. The most successful investors seem to integrate insights from all three elements. They look for a founder who is obsessed with solving a real problem, who can build and lead a strong team, who manages cash like gold, and who demonstrates both the humility to listen and adapt, pivot if needed, and the wisdom to actively leverage their network for help. It's that holistic picture. #outro.
So there you have it. You've seen the numbers, you've heard the stories, you've unpacked the data with us. The journey of a startup is undeniably perilous, isn't it? It's a real gauntlet of challenges that tests every single aspect of a venture and its founders. But hopefully, it's also clear from our discussion today that it's far from just a random roll of the dice. There are definitely actionable insights, common patterns, and strategic choices that can dramatically shift the odds in your favor.
Absolutely. While challenges are inevitable and external circumstances or sheer bad luck can certainly play a role sometimes, understanding these common pitfalls, the reasons why most fail, and the strategies consistently employed by this successful few provides a really powerful roadmap. It's fundamentally about being prepared, being adaptable, listening to the market, and building a strong foundation, both in terms of your product market fit and your team culture, that can hopefully withstand the inevitable storms and allow you to capitalize on the opportunities when they arise. It's much more about proactive mastery of the fundamentals than just reactive crisis management.
So what stands out most to you, our listener, from today's deep dive? What's the one insight, perhaps, that you'll carry forward? Whether you're maybe thinking of launching your own venture someday, or perhaps you're looking to invest in the next big thing, or even just working within a startup environment, we'd encourage you to maybe delve deeper into thinking about that fascinating interplay between founder traits and financing strategies, and to always, always prioritize finding and validating a genuine market need, and never underestimate the critical importance of the human element in leadership, because ultimately, businesses are built by people for people. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.